Welcome to the Blueprints podcast, where we uncover the real stories behind building a business, a life, and a legacy. I'm Isabelle.
And I'm Michael. This is your Blueprint.
Today, we're going to be diving into the difference between being an entrepreneur and being a solopreneur and which path is really right for you. So, Michael, I'm really excited because you and your journey have been in both positions, right, over the years.
Yeah.
So tell me about your journey.
Yeah. So this is a really exciting topic because I think, again, in the early days, you don't really know who you are. And we talked about this on a recent podcast, your gifts and things like that, identifying those. But the journey really began for me as a solopreneur because I didn't really know what I wanted or who I was. I just knew that I wanted to do something for myself. And so that led to me starting buying houses and I did everything myself. Now I did have I don't know if I ever was truly a solopreneur because your mom did a lot of the back end stuff for me. I would rope her into. I didn't pay very well either. And that can be a hard thing as a solopreneur because you're always trying to keep costs down. But here's what I'd say. A solopreneur, and in the construction industry, there is a ton of solopreneurs. It's actually the majority of the tradespeople that own their own companies are mostly solopreneurs. They're really not trying to have a bunch of people work for them. In a lot of cases, they would rather just work by themselves and not have to have the headache of all the things of a business. So I define a solopreneur as you're a one-person operation, and it could be in construction. It could be like my tailor, Lee Taylor. She works all by herself, and you could be a solopreneur accountant, consultant. There's a lot of solopreneur opportunities where you don't have anybody else working for you. As an entrepreneur, it's more about team. It's more about building a team and developing people around you that can do and creating great roles and creating a culture where people love to work. And I would say that's the biggest difference between the two of them. And another way to test the litmus test for this, it would be take a 3-week vacation and what happens when you come back. So as a solopreneur, you're going to have zero income during that time. As an entrepreneur, you're going to come back to a company that's still running. Now, they're going to have missed you probably as an entrepreneur if you're still working day to day in the business, meaning you still probably bring a lot of energy and a lot of exciting things, but you can actually leave the business, come back, and it's not on fire. It's still working.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've really leaned into the entrepreneurial journey and love to coach and build up a team. But you've been, like you said, in both positions.
Yeah. I mean, it's exciting. I think back to my solopreneur start, it started on a part-time basis though.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, I still had a full-time job. And so then on my nights and weekends, I was doing this house gig, buying houses and flipping them or flipping them and turning around them and selling them or keeping them as rental properties and then managing and getting into the management business. So, and you're a jack of all trades if you do something like that where you need to have forms and, know how to evict somebody or know how to, collect rents or whatever that you don't, you got to learn all that. Yeah. You don't have a department that handles the late fees and all that kind of stuff. So, but as a solopreneur, if you were a solopreneur that was a trim carpenter, you get to control the quality. You get to control what job site you go to every day. As an entrepreneur, you got multiple job sites and you got multiple trim carpenters. And so you're developing those people to be able to do those things that only you, when you first started the business, were able to do.
I think where you went there is really important. And what I want to dive into next is the benefits and then the challenges of both of those positions. So being a solopreneur, some of the benefits you mentioned, you get to set your own schedule. You go to the job sites you want to go to. Or being the entrepreneur, maybe one of the drawbacks or the downsides is like, you've got all these projects going on in our business, right? Yeah. And like what the team says they need you at is the one that they need you at. Like you don't really get to choose at a certain point. It's like you go where the need is and where you need to be to develop the team.
Yeah. Yeah, one story comes to mind, and it was early on in my journey as starting to become an entrepreneur. I had this was back in 2006, 2007. Actually, it was 2007, and the economy was booming. Housing was at an all-time high, and it still hasn't reached back to those numbers of houses that were being built, at least in Michigan. It was somewhere around 45,000 houses in the
Wow.
2007-8 era. Well, the crash happened in 2008, right?
Yep.
So as I was developing a company, what happened was I had gotten a pretty big account, and we were building front
Oh
porches,
yeah, I
yeah,
remember that.
for a company here in Michigan, and the economy dropped, and they stopped paying us. And
Mhm.
as a newly budding entrepreneur, I was now in a position where I had I think I had four guys that were working with me, and I was primarily, I wasn't primarily on the site anymore. I was starting to go out and just do estimates and handle all the, marketing stuff and
Yeah.
working on the back end stuff. And I was starting to have time, a little bit of time to do that. I was still having to visit job sites. I was still creating material lists. I was still doing a lot of the things that you might do. But that winter, so basically what happened is that year, the economy crashed. We had, we went from doing like, I think we had 50 projects that we did for that company that year. Plus I was doing other custom stuff,
Mhm.
to zero from them. So all of a sudden
Wow.
I got nothing to do. They stopped paying us. So I was going into the slow months in Michigan with the cold winter coming, and I came across a project that there was a solopreneur builder. His name was Rich, and got to work with Rich, and that was such a gift for me, and it was such a contrast for me about Rich and how he ran his business and kind of how I wanted to run my business. I learned so much from Rich. Rich was one of the best builders that I've ever been around. He grew up in the lumber industry. His dad was an entrepreneur,
Okay.
and then he carried on the tradition, and he remained a entrepreneur, but he really decided to be a solopreneur. So when I
Mhm.
met Rich, he pretty much worked by himself, and his dog was always with him on the job site, and he could do the CAD drawings, he could do the custom framing things, he could do the high end trim. He just knew how to
Mhm.
do everything in the building trades. I mean, even to how he tore down walls, like he had the best technique for
Wow.
everything, because he had done it all so many times and gotten so good. And I think that's the real gift of a solopreneur. The drawback is they can only do so much work. There's only so much output that one person can give
Mhm.
back to the marketplace. And in order to get the kind of skill set that he had to work at that. He wasn't like that. I started working with Rich in maybe the later part of his career. So he had 40 years, 50 years of
Mhm.
construction, project, learning and failing and learning a new trade, learning how to do tile, or learning how to do, custom, big huge custom house, frame
Yeah.
job, and he learned how to use the CAD software. So he had to learn all of that stuff. And if you are that person that really loves to do everything, and that's just going to jazz you up no matter what, and you're going to be fine with collecting the check at the end, and you're going to be fine with all that stuff, that may be a good calling for you. On the flip side, for me, the beautiful thing about that is I got hooked up with Rich that winter, and he needed a crew to help him with this large project that he had was working on down on a lake. And so me and my crew ended up working for him, at a much lower rate than I was charging other people at that time, or
Sure.
prior to the crash. So got to work with Rich, and I got to learn a lot from him that winter, and I was able to keep all of my guys on staff, which
Mhm.
was really important because, again, I had I had zero money in the bank that winter because that builder didn't pay us. And it
Wow.
wasn't really till the following October that we actually got paid, and it was miraculous that we even got paid. And I know that, like, that is a pro and a con. So as a solopreneur, if I didn't have the ability, because I was building a lot for that builder, because I had multiple guys and I had multiple crews.
Mhm.
And so I was amassing a big accounts receivable, which was great. But if I was if that was my only account and I was a solopreneur, like I would have been out of business. I mean, I basically would have had to go find, and I pretty much was out of business. We didn't shut the doors, but we were pretty close. And if it wasn't for that one job with Rich, I wouldn't have gotten through that winter. I mean, maybe something else would have come up, and that's really how it comes. And I think for both the entrepreneur and the solopreneur is a lot of faith in owning a business. I think the stretch for an entrepreneur is you have to build people, and those people are a direct reflection on who you are. So if I don't do a good job taking care of myself and building my skills and things like that, well, it'll probably reflect below me with my team. I won't be developing up leaders, and I think as a solopreneur, you're working at getting better at the craft. You're working at getting better at delivery. You're working at, as an entrepreneur, you're also working on those, but you're having to develop people and to get those people developed to be able to deliver the product better. So
Right.
you're once removed from doing and then where we're at now, like I might not see a job site.
Yeah.
I didn't even visit a job site, and we built it, so 25 years later, we're, from where I started in business, doing everything myself to now where we're at, it's just a whole different mindset. It's a whole different belief. It's a whole different way of doing it. And there's a lot of things that you can do as a solopreneur that you can't do as an entrepreneur. You'll often find that using the construction industry, but I think this goes for most industries, a solopreneur is limited on their ability to do customer service or follow through or, getting back to a job site, because now they're off to another large project and they're going to be on that for 3 months and they can't get back to do another project for that homeowner, or, to be able to be available, where with a company that has multiple crews and has, a business model in place, they're able to service a lot more people in the marketplace.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, I really, as you talked more and more, I'm like, wow, there's so many nuances to each, and they really are very different.
Yep, they are.
But both of them have great value. And in the construction industry, it is interesting because, like you said, a large majority of people in the trades are solopreneurs. I mean, I think of even a lot of the electricians and HVAC companies that we work with, a lot of them are like, the dad's in the business, and then maybe the son works there too, but it's just one or two of them. And they're really craftsmen in their trades.
Yep.
But they don't have, they don't want to grow this into something where they have a bunch of other people to manage and, work with. They just want to be able to do their craft really well.
Yeah. And I would say as a solopreneur, you better love the trade or the role that you're going to primarily do. You got to love that, because it's going to be what you're going to spend the majority of your time. So if you're a tailor, you're going to be, tailoring clothes all day long, like that's going to be the thing that you're going to do. The stuff like accounting and the other aspects of the business, the marketing and things like that, you're probably not going to spend a lot of time on those. It's going to be mostly word of mouth, because you can only handle so much business anyways.
Right.
So early on, people always say, well, where do you get most of your business? And they're like, word of mouth, we don't advertise. And the reason is it doesn't take a lot of work to keep a solopreneur busy, for a year. It also is the drawback is that they can't service that many people. As an entrepreneur, it's really important that you develop a marketing strategy. You develop, a way to, generate leads and fulfill those leads and service those clients at a higher level. That would be one of the, another big difference between the two. So,
and one thing that we didn't dive into is the ebbs and flows of business as a solopreneur. I mean, I remember you experienced a lot more like, okay, we've got all this work, and then now we have, no work, and all this work and no work. And it just seemed like really high peaks and low valleys. And I mean, not that we don't have that today. We definitely still do. And seasonally, like you get different requests from people, but you have less of that because you have more of like a larger organization working to, you've got 8 salespeople out, and they're all doing they're all self-generating deals and in the network. So you have less of that.
Yep. And that is a big challenge as a solopreneur. You're out doing the work, and then all of a sudden you're out of work, and then you're like, where's my next job? And it will come along if you stick to it, but that is, you can really get focused in on just completing the project that you're on, because it takes so much energy, to do the project or to do the you get in a big account, let's say, you know, and you got this big
Mhm.
account that comes in and it absorbs 90% of your working hours as a solopreneur, and then all of a sudden that account ends. Well, now what do? You know, because you haven't been out talking or you haven't been out, you know, generating other business, and it can dry up pretty quick.
Yeah.
So, but as also, I think, say on the flip side, on the entrepreneurial side, as you build a business, as you grow your production, your output, your operations, if your sales don't keep up with that as you're growing it, you have to build your sales. You got to have sales first
Mhm.
in order to get the work done. You know, there's no work to get done. There's no, you know, no sale, no work, you know? So,
Mhm.
um, just there's always an ebb and flow and a balance in a business. And it's just part of being an entrepreneur. So
Yeah.
if you don't like that, and
You don't
I'd
like a
say the
little risk.
majority of people don't like that, it's good to have a job and have that consistency for you, because I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs is the ebb and flow, and learning how
Mhm.
to manage that and their income and
The stress that can come with that. I
yeah,
mean, there's so
yeah,
much when you're, up in the air with your income.
yeah, yep. And I will say this is one little plug I'll give today is that you know, I think all stress is really created in the mind, you
Mm.
know. And what I mean by that is, yes, there are, as human beings, we're going to go through very hard and difficult things in life. You know, we're going to lose somebody that we love. We're going to lose a dog. We're going to, you know, have that pain that we're going through. But the side of it of like worrying about something that hasn't already happened as an entrepreneur, you know, how many of us are sitting and thinking and worrying about, you know, a project failing or something happening or going wrong? That's creating your own stress. Now, thinking about those things and then putting tools in place and systems in place and a management process and system in place to head that off before it does go off the road, but that doesn't have to be stressful. That doesn't have to be create fear and stress. Uh, but I would say for me and for most entrepreneurs that I know, as we grow and we let go of more stuff, it can tend to be like, man, I'm more stressed out, you know? And that's
Yeah.
why, you know, I've heard so many people along the years of like, you know, I grew to this point and I just decided that I didn't want all that. There was too much stress,
Mm.
you know? But I would contend and say that all stress is created in fighting with reality, you know? What does that mean? Well, it just means that, well, reality is what today is. And so I have to deal with reality. If I got a problem on a job site, if I got an upset customer, if I have, a team member that's sick or decided to leave, or, you know, a key member of the leadership team or whatever could happen in in your company, you know, it's part of it. As a solopreneur, if you get injured, what happens? You got to have surgery on your hand.
Yeah, you can't work.
You can't work, you know? And so those are all real things that could create stress. But what I would say, and the most exciting part of being an entrepreneur, is when you have a dream and you you lean into that dream, you lean into that idea. And for me, that was all about impacting families. That was really even the name of the show, the blueprint. The blueprint for me was I wanted to make a difference in people's lives. I wanted to help people grow and go from a lower level of living life to a higher level of living life. And that's the definition of an entrepreneur, really, is taking something of low value in the market and in creating a service that gives value to the marketplace. And when you do that, people will buy your service because you're no longer a commodity, because they can see the value that you bring to them and their home and to their lives.